What's up, movie lovers? We're the Hilsmaniacs, and today we're going to be doing the first round of a tournament that we've created featuring 12 of our favorite movie franchises that we are going to be pitting head-to-head tournament style to determine what we feel will be the best movie franchise of all time. So the way this works is we wrote down 12 of our favorite movie franchises, picked them out at random, and put them head to head. The bracket looks like this. And over the next couple weeks, we will be talking about each round of the tournament. So how this is going to work is we will pick out which of the two, like for example, there's two movie franchises against each other in the first, on the first part of the bracket. We'll decide which one we think is better, and then you know how a tournament works. So the first bracket that we have is the John Wick franchise versus the Star Wars franchise.
Star Wars
this is going to be tough.
All right, moving on.
So let's talk about what we like about both of these franchises. First of all, John Wick, if you've never seen it.
You could have just stopped there, John Wick.
Okay. John Wick, well, yeah. If you've never seen John Wick, it's basically just definitely action-driven movie franchise.
He's basically an assassin that retires and comes back.
People wrong, and
people messed with him.
He goes on a massive killing spree, Call of Duty style.
Yes. Multiple weapons of different varieties, and really good. They get better as they go, I think.
Yeah, and I mean they really step up with the action and everything else.
I really enjoyed the John Wick movies. I'm looking forward to John Wick Chapter 4.
There will be a fourth one. I've heard there's going to be some, I don't know if it's a spin-off series or a spin-off movie featuring one of the other characters in the movie as well. So
it won't be as fun without Keanu.
Yeah, I know. But if you're a fan of those sort of things with action and all that stuff in it, and a lot of shooting and guns and whatnot, John Wick is definitely the movie for you.
Speaking of movies with shooting and guns and whatnot,
lots of whatnots.
The Star Wars franchise, all 6 movies, because we don't talk about those last 3.
Whoa, okay, we can talk about episode 7.
No, we don't talk about those last 3.
Okay.
The first 6 movies of Star Wars and the Clone Wars and Rebels and Mandalorian and all that kind of stuff. But, Star Wars has always been my favorite franchise, and it's hard to vote against it, but going up against a franchise John Wick that's had 3 perfect movies so far, whereas Star Wars has really only had 3 perfect movies out of the 9 that they have.
Yeah, if you ignore 6 of the Star Wars movies,
anything
before or after 4, 5, and 6.
So 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and so.
And then maybe if you include the Mandalorian and some of the shows or something, but then it's like a perfect series, So get rid of most of the franchise, and you're good.
And you're good, whereas John Wick has 3 perfect movies, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I personally, and this is coming from a Star Wars fan, I think that John Wick would be Star Wars.
Just because I like more action and stuff, and a lot of the Star Wars stuff seems to be more talking and less action. Some of it's okay.
I'm picking the only reasons I'm picking John Wick is because John Wick has had a perfect franchise so far.
I can't believe you said that.
It might go down, but Star Wars has had 9 movies and really only 3 of them are good. And so, unless you count the TV series, which are all good. So I personally, this coming from the Star Wars fan, pick John Wick.
I'd have to agree with that. John Wick, every time you watch it, it's still full of action and stuff, and it's fun to just go back and watch how many times, because he kills a whole bunch of people by himself, and it's a lot of fun to watch if you're into those sort of things. It has a lot more action than Star Wars does. I know Star Wars is in space and all that stuff. You can only do so much, but I feel like there is too much talking. So your winner of that round is the John Wick franchise.
Surprising, Star Wars didn't make it that far.
Bye, Star Wars.
So the next bracket, if you will, that we have, the next matchup is Disney, which is non-Pixar, all the animated
Disney. Or just anything made by Disney ever.
Yes, not Fox properties and stuff. The main just Disney stuff. Versus my other favorite franchise, the Harry Potter franchise, and I love Disney. I love Harry Potter. There's just too many Disney movies I think that I haven't seen for me personally to pick it over Harry Potter. And
I'm just not a big fan of everything bursting into a musical randomly.
I mean, I don't even mind that because I love most of the songs from Disney, and I have seen a lot of the movies, but it's been forever for some of them. Some of them I haven't seen yet.
I'd say honestly the best Disney movies I think I've ever seen were the High School Musical trilogy. That's just us. We were younger then.
Hey, I still like High School Musical, but I think I'm picking Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'd say Harry Potter seems to have a bigger fan base than okay, I wouldn't say that, but because Disney's so popular, it has
yes, Disney. I'm not taking anything away from Disney, but just for me, in terms of how many movies I've seen, how many I like versus how many I dislike. Because these are the things I try and look at when determining stuff like this, for rankings or whatever. Right. And because there's so many Disney movies that I really haven't seen or don't remember if I have seen them, and Harry Potter, I can quote word for word almost. So I can't get rid of both of my number one and number two series in the first round. Like, that just can't happen. So I'm picking Harry Potter.
Next up, we have the Hunger Games franchise versus the Pixar franchise.
Pixar.
Okay. Well, yeah, definitely Pixar. These movies are really, really good. If you've never seen my video that I did maybe a couple weeks ago or something on why you should watch Pixar movies. Go check that out. I did a whole thing on what I like about the Pixar movies and why you should watch them.
There's just so many classic Pixar movies. You think of Toy Story, Monsters Inc.
Cars 2. There's not a crappy
and the
Pixar
fact that
movie.
there is this, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, the Pixar theory, where everything fits into one thing. The fact that there is this theory and there's so many people talking about different things that have to do with Pixar, and just it's this very popular franchise, even though it's a bunch of separate movies kind of in one world, if you will. It's not really, like the Hunger Games is 4 consecutive movies all based on the same thing, whereas Pixar is a bunch of different movies.
It doesn't come out and say directly that all these movies are connected like the MCU
does. But it's theorized that all of these, and certain connections, with seeing things in the movies, and just the movies in general. The Toy Story, we could have just did the Toy Story movies for this because they're so good as a franchise. All 3 of or 4 of them now, I guess. It's just that's one of those series that's within Pixar. It's kind of a subcategory of Pixar.
You go into a Pixar movie expecting a good story and things like that. Not as much action and things like that, which I'm all for sometimes. If it's just a nice family friendly or funny funny movie or whatever, it's they're all entertaining in different ways.
So I think we're in agreement on that one.
I think that Pixar beats the Hunger Games.
The next matchup we have here is the classic Indiana Jones franchise, not counting that 4th crappy one.
Get rid of that one.
And the XMen franchise, the
not
Fox,
counting anything after X-Men 3.
And so you basically have 3 versus 3 because we're excluding.
No, we have to include.
Yeah, you have to include them when talking about this.
I think with the first 3 X-Men movies, so those were kind of classic superhero movies. Even on the same level as the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. It's that same kind of thing. But then as the longer the franchise went on, it kind of started going in a different direction and got a little bit worse. Even when they had basically sort of a reboot, I guess, of the franchise, because they did the X-Men First Class with we got to see basically the origins of
3.
We got to see the origins of the friendship between Charles Xavier and Eric Lenscher, aka Professor X, and Magneto, and things like that. And I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. And I kind of even enjoyed Days of Future Past a little bit, because that one was it was cool to see how they interwove both the older cast, with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and all them in it, and then they meet the younger cast and things like that. That was kind of fun. I wish they would have maybe They kind of did that in the MCU, I guess, but it would have been interesting to see, like, future Tony Stark teaming up with past Tony Stark in the MCU or something. That would have been a cool thing to do in that.
Right.
So the fact they did it in X-Men, although it wasn't like a great movie, but it was still interesting. And then after that, it just went downhill.
Yeah.
Other than, if you don't, like, Logan was a great
Logan
X-Men
was
movie.
great.
That was
it
fantastic.
was probably the best one.
And the Deadpool movies were funny.
Yes.
And then you look at Indiana Jones, and while it is a fun... it's a fun thing to just kind of think about, like, he's going on these adventures to find all this not even archaeological stuff.
Well, basically, he's like an archaeologist. Yes. But,
he just has a whip. These guys have superpowers.
Again, the X-Men, the chemistry between Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart with Hugh Jackman and the rest of the cast was I think what made these original X-Men movies what they were, and then to bring that back in Logan with Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, just the way they worked together is what made those movies entertaining. And then you kind of got rid of that, and nothing against James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender and Jennifer Lawrence and all them in the new ones, but they didn't have the same chemistry that Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen had. And so you take that, and then you look at Indiana Jones, where it's basically just Harrison Ford. There's obviously, like Sean Connery's in one, Cate Blanchett's in one. I think Sean Connery's in a couple of them or something, but
there's not really a lot to these movies either.
Right, and Indiana Jones is it's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's a cosplay opportunity too. You just wear the hat.
Basically, yes. But it also does open up. It's kind of like it gives me like the National Treasure kind of vibe. Like, does this stuff actually exist? Is there hidden treasure? Yeah. Could you find the Ark of the Covenant? Or the Holy Grail in certain locations? Could you use these resources to figure these things out? Could you use old maps to figure out where certain things are buried and where there's treasure and all this kind of stuff? And it's basically a fun adventure film versus the X-Men with the original three, at least, because those new ones sucked. But again, looking at how many I dislike versus how many I like in the franchise, I would have, because there's only one that I don't like in the Indiana Jones movies, and that's the fourth one, versus four in the X-Men if you don't count the Wolverine movies.
Yeah,
because there's Dark Phoenix and then the three.
I kind of see where you're going with this. That you might say Indiana Jones wins here.
I don't. This one's hard because I do like the original X-Men. I love Logan, and even the Wolverine movie, the other the Wolverine and X-Men Origins. I had fun with them. I know a lot of people hate on them, and taking them for separate movies instead of like part of the X-Men franchise. I think they were good action movies. I really do. But
Wolverine's just
again, so you have to look at like superheroes versus just like a professor who just basically is a adventurer on the side, basically. So this one's hard.
I think, like you said, if we were to look at it in terms of movies that we didn't like in the franchise, there's more, like the X-Men franchise just kind of went off the rails by the end. Indiana Jones, did too, technically. If you don't count the fourth movie in that franchise, just do the original three, then I don't think there was anything wrong really with Indiana Jones. And even with the X-Men, since they're being rebooted basically in the MCU
so is Indiana
at some
Jones.
point. Well, no, but the X-Men and the mutants and all that is being rebranded will be brought to the MCU, so there'll probably be a lot better movies in the future for that.
Hopefully.
That we can then kind of judge for ourselves on how much better the story could have been compared to what they did. I'd go with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, me too. The next bracket we have here is the 6 Mission Impossible movies versus the Lord of the Rings / Hobbit. We kind of combine them both because the Hobbit's kind of a prequel to.
I understand that Lord of the Rings and I guess even the Hobbit movies are like a classic. You know, like everybody can probably quote something from the Lord of the Rings. Probably everybody has seen Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit and things
or
like
at least
that.
knows.
Or and played the there's even video games based on it, everything else. But if you look at that compared to Mission Impossible, which is what we're doing in this bracket, there's not really much. Just looking at these two movies, not much happens in Lord of the Rings compared to Mission Impossible. Like action wise, I mean, there's a lot of walking in Lord of the Rings. I've heard that as a complaint from a lot of people that have seen they're just like, it's 3 hours of walking, and then the next movie is 3 more hours of walking with some battles.
I think Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I mean, The Hobbit has a lot more action, obviously, than Lord of the Rings. But I think the Lord of the Rings franchise is better at storytelling than the Mission Impossible ones. Because there was a lot of stuff in Mission Impossible, just different ones throughout the series, that it's like, oh yeah, this guy's an ex-friend of Tom Cruise's character, but we've never heard of this guy before, and now all of a sudden he's the main villain in this movie, and like, and they're like, oh, he hates him because he did this. Well, there was no backstory to it. It's just a new character that we're supposed to hate now all of a sudden. That they just introduced. Whereas Lord of the Rings, they do a lot of that build up. They even the narration from Galadriel at the beginning, where she introduces the rings that were given to the elves and man and the dwarves and all that,
And I'd say,
and then talks about the one main ring, and then goes into basically the story of Frodo.
So I'd say story-wise, Lord of the Rings is probably has more story to it than the Mission Impossible movies are all just kind of standalones. Like the only reason you would if you watched them out of order or something, if you watched like the fourth one, the only reason you would go back and watch maybe one of the other three is just to learn who the character Ethan Hunt is and why what this Mission Impossible Force.
Yes.
Is or whatever they're called, or the IMF, Impossible Mission Force. That's it. Like who they are and things like that. But other than that, they could all count as like individual movies. Where Lord of the Rings, you need to watch them all in order to see what's happening. Why is this going on? And even go back and watch The Hobbit as the prequel to all of this. So in terms of like story and everything, I'd say Lord of the Rings beats Mission Impossible.
I would go with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
And finally, we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The entire
so the MCU, all 23 movies or whatever it has been so far, plus including all the new Disney Plus series that they've got so far, versus the Jurassic Park franchise.
All six.
All five movies and then the sixth one. I think we can both agree here that the MCU is better than really.
Yeah, MCU beats Jurassic Park.
MCU beats Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is a fun series, and even these aren't necessarily the only connection really between the three movies to each other is just they go to the characters go to the same island.
See, and I rewatched the Jurassic Park movies because I did my inconsistencies.
This does include Jurassic World.
You can go check out my inconsistencies videos in Jurassic Park. But I rewatched all three of them, and really, like you said, the only thing that really connects them is basically InGen, the company that created the dinosaurs, that was owned by John Hammond in the first one. Other than that, they bring back some of the characters, like Sam Neill and Laura Dern come back in the third one, even though they weren't in the second one. Jeff Goldblum's in the second one, but not in the third one, So they bring back some of the actors, but they go to different islands, and then even in Jurassic World, they're on the original island, but they make like a new park and all that kind of stuff, and then things happen, and it's new characters and different things going on. So, I love the original Jurassic Park. It is such a classic movie. I could watch it pretty much whenever, and still really enjoy the first Jurassic Park. And I didn't mind 2 and 3. Jurassic World was kind of Fallen Kingdom we shouldn't mention.
Yeah, that one was.
But compared to the MCU, and again going back to that, how many I like versus how many I dislike. You look at there's 4 in the Jurassic Park franchise because I think there's 5 total, right? So 4
now,
really
they
that
got
I
the
don't
third.
like. Now, MCU, there are a couple that I don't like, but overall, I don't like them for pretty much stupid reasons.
I mean,
That's
the
why I don't like
MCU
these movies.
has always
So,
been about
MCU.
like every movie in the MCU is connected to at least one other movie in the MCU, like in some way. You know, whether it's a passing reference to another character,
Whether you realized it the first time you
Yeah.
watched it or not, there is a connection.
and all this, and
in
it's
some
one
way.
big intertwining story, and that's like
Yes.
what I love about the MCU so much is that they somehow found a way over 23 films to connect all these things, even if the
Yes.
characters aren't teaming up in every movie together. They still find a way to make references to the other characters or continue off of what they did. Like, for example, when they did the Avengers movie, and then you went into Iron Man 3 and all other individual movies again. So, like Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America Winter Soldier. And they still told the story of, like, what they're doing after they teamed up with each other, you know, but still keeping it connected to that.
Right.
Like, now we're in the world after the alien invasion in, you know, the first...
And the
Avengers
long-term
movie and things like
storytelling, I think, in the MCU, I mean, they pretty much had to have this planned since 2008 when Iron Man came out, even though it's not
Exactly.
chronologically the first movie in the MCU. It's still the first movie that basically started the MCU, and so they had to have all of this planned out since Iron Man was created, basically. And even if they didn't have every single detail planned out, they still had to know the direction they were going, and to be able to build that up to the first Avengers movie, you know, with the solo Iron Man movies, and then the solo
Right.
Captain Americas, the solo Thor movies, the Incredible Hulk.
Well,
You know, and then build up to the first Avengers movie, which was great, and then they introduced Ant-Man and
and the
you know,
fact...
and then
yeah.
more Captain America, more Thor, more
And
Iron
the fact
Man.
that they keep
you know.
adding more things to it
Right.
also, and still finding unique ways to make stories out of
Yes.
these characters
and
and,
then
things like
yeah,
that.
and then we got Black
We get new
Panther
characters
and
coming in.
Ant-Man
yeah.
and the Wasp. You have you know, and with the new deal with Fox that Disney has, they now have Fantastic Four and
Yeah.
X-Men, so you can do
So
a lot of
it just keeps growing,
building
whereas the
there.
Jurassic Park franchise, I think, can only go so far
Right.
before... Like, this will probably be the last one when they do Jurassic World Dominion, I think is what it's called, right?
I mean,
That's the third
I
Jurassic
liked the
World
trailer,
movie.
but that would,
I mean, it's basically the same premise almost as like
Yes.
Planet of the Apes, sort of, or the that new Planet of the
I mean,
Apes.
yeah,
trilogy.
basically
we created
yeah.
dinosaurs. Now the
And now they
dinosaurs are
take
going to
over.
end up
Yeah.
killing off all the humans and stuff like that. It's just going to be another world of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs are basically the main characters.
But I think
And that,
overall, the MCU is just a much better, you know. And like I said, with the long-term storytelling, you know, I guarantee that when Steven Spielberg made the first Jurassic Park movie, he wasn't like, oh, I have an idea, let's do 5 more after this, you know.
Yeah, it was just
whereas
meant to be
Iron
a
Man,
thing,
it was
yeah,
like, we're
yeah.
creating Iron Man, but this is the direction it has to go, because Stan Lee was still alive and involved in a lot of most of the aspects of pretty much every movie in the MCU to make sure it went the direction he was trying to get it to go. So it had that long-term storytelling, and I'm not, you know, compared to you, I'm not that big of an MCU fan. You know, I've always been more Star Wars and Harry Potter and stuff like that, but in this tournament, I kind of have to vote MCU just because it is such a great overall
It's definitely
franchise.
way better than Jurassic Park. But
Yes.
let us know what you guys think down in the comments section. This concludes the first round of this tournament. The next 2 Sundays, we will continue on with the second round, and then we will have the final 3 as the way this tournament would work out
Yes.
in the third week, and we'll determine which one is the best movie franchise out of all of the ones on this list. So if you're a fan of tournaments or things like this, please come back for the next video.
Yeah, and let us know what else you'd like to see a
Yes.
tournament of, if you want to see TV shows or just like maybe certain movies in the franchise. Like we could break down the MCU and just do other, you know.
Yeah, we've
the
got
mini
plenty. We've got plenty in
franchises
store.
within
So
that,
if you're a fan of this kind of thing, please like this video and subscribe for more just like it. Also, let us know down in the comments section how we did comparing these movies. If you
Yes.
think we made the right decisions or not, and let us know what your choices would have been.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry,
you-
Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars got canned immediately. But thank you for watching the video, everybody, and we'll see you next week for round 2.
Bye, guys.
Subscribe.